don't want to appear, you can leave your cameras off. Okay, thank you very much. Maris.
Yeah, many thanks, Laura, and good morning, everyone. On behalf of DG Mare, I would like to welcome you for this first edition of the EU4Algae Quarterly Webinar, and we are excited to have you on board today. Maybe you go to next slide. Yeah, today's session will be packed with valuable insights, and you will learn what EU4Algae has accomplished during the first 3 years, and also get a look on what's planned for the future. EU4Algae is just to emphasize that it's an initiative by the European Commission, and we are proud that it has led by a consortium representing a majority of the stakeholders in the EU algae sector. We are now in the 3rd year of the EU algae initiative, and there has been a strong progress there. Without diving into all 23 actions of the initiative, here are just few highlights. DG Mare is working closely with the national aquaculture authorities to share best practices, to improve governance and strengthen cooperation. And the goal is to show how algae farming benefits local communities, national economies, and marine ecosystems. And the second EU Algae Awareness Summit this October will support this mission. Next slide. Algae is now recognized as part of the EU aquaculture. It has been featured for the first time in the regular Eurobarometer surveys of DG Mare that were looking on the consumer perception of the fisheries and aquaculture products. And for the first time, algae has been added to that. And algae has been also highlighted in the EU aquaculture campaign launched this week that I hope you all are aware now. The algae industry is full of energy and having a momentum now. While current volumes cultivated microalgae and seaweed are still relatively small in Europe, many companies are showing quite impressive growth. And for some, it even reaches 100% increase in production per year. Also, investor interest is rising. We have hosted Blue Invest e-pitching sessions for algae companies for 2 years in a row now. And also the European Investment Bank has recently published a report on unlocking the potential of Europe's seaweed and bivalve industries, just to emphasize that European Investment Bank is considered the European Sustainability Bank, and I think it's a very good sign. Global brands like IKEA and Amazon are exploring seaweed. Their involvement signals exciting and growing market opportunities for the sector. At the same time, the European imports are Europe imports a lot of algae products worth of €500 million. And many algae-based foods and goods used in Europe come from China or Korea, highlighting the opportunity for the EU-based production to grow. I would like to conclude by saying that working together is essential if we want to grow the algae sector in the EU, as outlined in the EU Algae Initiative. And the European Commission will keep supporting new projects, especially those focused on real market solutions, test sites for cultivation, and stronger cooperation between the different algae initiatives, as you will see later today. And the future of algae sector in Europe is promising, and provided that we work together effectively and that we really focus our efforts where they can deliver the greatest impact and added value. That was my short introduction. Thank you very much. And Laura, back to you.
Thank you very much, Maris, for these welcoming words. Very inspiring and promising, as you said. So let's maybe move. I'll briefly introduce you the agenda for today. We are now moving to a slot where we want to show you all the work that we have done from 2022 to 2025. We have presented previously in our annual meetings and other occasions the reports that we were working on, but finally they are being published, and we really would like to share this with you because some of you and maybe most of you have also contributed to this effort. And then I will briefly introduce what we have in the pipeline for the coming years. And then we have a panel where we're going to showcase EU4Algae funded projects that are included in the SINEA portfolio. And before that, we have Julia Gavoni from SINEA presenting the SINEA-algae portfolio analysis. So as you know, we have by design this mandate always to put together different EU4Algae funded projects, and this is what this panel is about. So moving forward, yeah, very excited to show you that we have some projects already published. There are 3 more coming soon. If you want to find all these reports, you can go to the Publications Office of the European Union and just search for EU4Algae, and you see all the reports there. So I'll invite my colleagues that have worked very hard in these reports to provide a brief introduction and some takeaways. So now I'll hand over to Eftalia Vanici. Eftalia?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we do.
Fantastic. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much all for joining. We are delighted to present the results. So I will present 3 results that actually they are in the pre-print phase. So I think that was the 3 blueprint blocks that you presented, Laura. So the first one, and I have to say that I'm very humble that all of you have contributed so much in the working group 5, specifically, but also other working groups for developing these reports, that they are so they are also validated and actually co-created with you all. The first report that I will twinkle upon was actually a core for the working group 5, which is actually algae for ecosystem service and bioremediation. And it was about developing a monitoring framework for algae to assess its bioremediation potential, and it's about micro and macroalgae in Europe. So we had the purpose of this was to look upon possibilities, different technologies and solutions that they are actually providing ecosystem services in terms of bioremediation of nutrients and carbon specifically. So we are not talking about biodiversity, for example, or other ecosystem services. We are mainly looking at bioremediation. And we're looking at specifically technology to microalgae and macroalgae for taking up nutrients, taking up carbon, intersymbiosis concepts, both at sea and on land. So we're looking at on the takeaways, we're looking at the place-based solutions. So what is the effect on the environment on site? So we have identified that we are missing technology expectations from the different bioremediation solutions that we have, like the bioremediation, like cleaning the water, for example, or taking up nutrients from industrial symbiosis from regional waters, while harvesting or picking up the beach cast. And we don't have really a vision when it comes to what is the potential for algae and how algae is valorized for developing these ecosystem services. Even ecosystem services are not well defined in a way. So we are very early stage. And there is definitely importance to bring it into technology level, not only at the algae level, like what is the expectation for each of these technologies for providing and has a positive impact. We have identified the 10 solutions that together with you, and we have looked upon and benchmarked them with other technologies that they are providing bioremediation systems, technologies like mussel farming, for example, like wastewater treatment facilities, like doing identification of wastewater on land. So they're very interesting, and see also the pros and cons, like the benefits and the harms. In order to be able to scale up and scale out bioremediation technologies and to reach its potential for providing the remediation needs, so providing battling eutrophication, like removing nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, or also speaking about carbon sequestration even topics. We need to have a clear, and I will talk about this later also, but we have a very clear on the negative impacts of the technology when they're scaling up. So in order to be able to look at the carrying capacities of environmental systems, for example. And this has been investigated that it has to be a place-based solution. We have to look at the low scale, like at the area-based management, to be able to say anything, and because its method, its system is unique. So we should start from monitoring framework from the local level and then scaling up. And next, please. So there is so much more in this report. I welcome you to look at it. The second report, which is actually an add-on in a way to the first report, is about looking at data that are needed to assess the bioremediation potential, like what data and models do we need and how they are actually produced now, how well they are integrated to existing European mapping services like EMODnet or Copernicus or the digital twin of the ocean. And as bioremediation is a complex topic to analyze, we're looking at, it's about based on models. Bioremediation itself cannot be measured from by in situ data. It has to be created through models, and it has to have data on biogeochemical cycles, on the growth models for seaweed. We're talking about seaweed here, and we are also looking at the pollution levels at the marine waters in order to understand like what is the potential of seaweed to remove pollutants, for example, but also what is in the future, what is the socioeconomic potential of scaling up seaweed for given regions. We are looking at models and maps. They have limitations, and when we are doing, for example, models and usually modeling models on models, then we have to consider that there are some limitations. We have to be very clear in the way what data, what are the limitations of the data we are using. Is it in situ data measured on land directly from the water? Is it satellite data from the satellites? Or is it just models that we are developing through that? So we have to have a very concrete understanding what are the limitations of models and maps in order, for example, the resolution of the models, in order to make concrete valorization and say anything about expectations of bioremediation, for example. We are looking at models need to be adaptive to specific species. So which seaweeds, because each seaweed is different. Areas have interacting with the climate or the geographies are very different. They have different, for example, pollution stressors. We have pressures like what we need to look at, and also contaminants. These models need to be very adapted, and also, by the way, they are, except for spatial different, they're also timely different. So qualitative in situ data are needed, are very much needed either from research or from business in order to have a good aggregation of information in the mapping services that we have in the future, like EMODnet, for example, or the future digital twin of the ocean. For getting this data, and I'm talking about in situ data, so it has to be collected from the sea. It has to be spatial timely relevant. The digital twin of the ocean will also being able to provide timely the time parameter, and we will have the opportunity to use it further. So it's actually quite revolutionary for the future. I'm very happy about that. So we need the research data in the future, that all the research data management plans should be using also EMODnet, for example, or a digital twin of the ocean for aggregating, for ingesting their data. That would be nice in order not to lose the opportunity to centralize the data we're collecting at research. Also, perhaps using business data, like national authorities or regional authorities could make it actually a good practice for uploading data from marine data, I'm talking about, the biological data from businesses to the aggregated mapping services, and also some citizen science group projects. could be also useful for enabling citizens to be involved in the data collection. Next, please. The third one that I will present was also developed soon, so you can even see the cover here. We are departing from place-based solution. We are looking now in the whole value chain. We're looking at seaweed and microalgae products. So we're looking at sustainable algae products of high potential. And also we're looking at what environmental tools we have for measuring environmental performance life cycle assessment. So this is also produced with you, but also other working groups. Not only the working group 5, but also the food, the biofertilizers working group, and so on. Yeah, so that was also for European Commission as primary end user, but also the industry, of course, that would be interested. So we are looking at that the seaweed, virtually all seaweed is actually wild harvesting from wild stocks, and the imports are more imports than exports in seaweed. We would like to move that into cultivation here, and this is what EU4Algae is doing. But before we scale up and we scale out, we need to have also a verification of environmental performance of algae value chains, in order to say also this is connection with the previous reports, that this is to have something to say about the environmental performance of the algae value chains and what the impact, like displacing other products that are more polluting for the environment, so to say. We need to verify the environmental performance of the algae value chains. So there is a lot of potential for scaling up. There is a lot of interest of replacing imports, as I said, with cultivation. There is a lot of industry demand for seaweed species that we could be covered, for example, for 20 to 40% or by the next years could be covered. And so we slash imports and we are producing the seaweeds that we need and all the microalgae. But with doing that, we need to also to have make sure that we are performing well. We have suggested that we integrate ecosystem service into the European Union's ongoing work on the product environmental footprint methods, in order to say something about, for example, nutrient uptake or carbon sequestration. We need to have secure, validated, robust, and easy, accessible life cycle assessment methods. For seaweeds, it's not the case yet. There is a lot of work also in the product environmental footprints, and there is already a lot of information about what is the next steps that could be done here. But there is a lot of work needed because before industry can pick up, especially talking about carbon sequestration matters. So, and carbon credits. This is also something that we work in the next EU4Algae contract as well. We suggest circular solutions, doing more with less, invest in circular economy, like for picking up the nutrients from the sea, but also for regeneration purposes, but also at land level. So we recycle nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus from waste streams, for example, or side streams, like food side streams for producing of algae. That also it's very important, and I know that there is a lot of work in the European Commission on that level. So yeah, and then I finish that. And then protect and enhance algae's legitimacy. We have a very strong responsibility towards already the consumers, that we will produce actually products that they have good reputation. So we have a good reputation for algae products, but we need to sustain that. And with that, I would like to close. Laura, back to you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if there are any pressing questions to Eftalia. We also have some time for Q&A in the end, but since there are still many outcomes to be presented, you can please also use the chat to interact, to make comments or questions. I cannot see any hands raised. I will hand over to Frederick Bruce, that will introduce other outcomes. Frederick will also moderate the session with the projects. Thank you very much for the projects to join us. and for accepting the invitation, Algae Probando, Simarco, Blue Baltic, and Nova Foodies. Frederic will make the proper introduction. So thank you very much, Frederic.
Thank you,
Over to
Laura.
you.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, you can move on to the next slide. So I'm Eftalia's colleague, and we'll just continue with the story so far of the first EU4Algae iteration. So what we've achieved, and there are a few more reports I'd like to show you, and a couple of online tools as well after that. So the first of these is the support for youth and entrepreneurs. So I was involved in the working group 7 on youth and entrepreneurship. So in a few meetings, we discussed the needs of young people, but also young businesses in getting started in the world of algae. And this first report is a very high-level report, basically trying to see what resources are out there in Europe already and also outside of Europe, and to consolidate those and to give young people and entrepreneurs some pointers in where to find these resources. So if they're for starting a business or even just wanting to study algae, then we have recommendations for courses, etc. So yes, it's not a particularly long report. It's quite simple. So the idea is just that it's digestible and it's not a very long report that you need to spend days reading. And we came up with just a few key takeaways here. So on the one hand, for young people, and then on the other hand, for entrepreneurs, so more business focused. And yeah, there were a list of recommendations, but condensed into the key takeaways. These were that algae should be promoted in schools. So really learning with kids from a very young age. There is a very good example in the US actually called the Algae Foundation, where they provide a whole range of teaching materials for teachers to actually order materials and then to do that as a class with their classrooms and their pupils. This obviously needs to fit with the national educational curriculum. So that is something that teachers need to navigate themselves. I mean, teachers have a very tough job, especially these days. So making resources that are very easy to use in the classroom and that are also relevant to their existing science curriculum is what is needed. So there are some examples mentioned, and that's the first key takeaway. Secondly, at perhaps a slightly higher age, so teenagers and so on-demand learning is becoming ever more popular. So online courses, something that you can do in between a full-time or a part-time job, or in between studying, or in your spare time after school. These are things that should be promoted, and I think there are more and more examples coming up. There's one from EABA, which is the European Algae Biomass Association, coming up. And there are examples in the US as well, from the University of San Diego in California. So those are all good resources for people wanting to learn a bit about algae in their spare time. Thirdly, practical placements. So this is something, the industry is still young, of course, so the companies are obviously very small. They're often micro or SMEs, so they don't necessarily have the capacity to take on interns or apprentices yet. But as soon as they are, this is a great way to train the future workforce in the algae industry. And it should be mutually beneficial for the people learning about algae and also for the company who get that extra labor in their company. So practical placements is number 3. And fourthly is more towards adult education. So this is linked to on-demand learning and micro-learning, so that we do need to educate authorities as well. So the people who are the key enablers for issuing licenses or granting building permission for a microalgae farm, for example, they need to understand what algae are. So this is something that can be promoted through projects and through other work happening in EU4Algae. So that's the youth side. And then on the entrepreneurship side, so as mentioned by Maris earlier, to designate test beds, because this is something young businesses really need, who can't necessarily afford to go all out and have a site granted, because that's a costly process. So they need a test area where they can develop prototypes, but also demonstrate these prototypes to potential investors. So these are 2 really key activities that young businesses need and designating test beds, whether that's within marine spatial plans or in local authorities, if they have like a innovation hub or center, that's somewhere that can happen. And then there are examples that already exist, but more of those would be great. Secondly, to incentivize investment, so to get the public sector basically interested in algae and pulling those levers that make investment more attractive, whether that's tax incentives or other kinds of subsidies, whether it's project funding, that's the investment. And then finally, to drive awareness and demand, which we will also talk about later today, to make consumers more aware of the general public, and also companies that can integrate algae into their processes. And here in red, so there's a support database that goes with this report, and it's linked in the report. It goes to an Airtable database, and that has a list of accelerators, courses, and other resources relevant to algae. Not necessarily specific, but at least relevant to algae. Next slide, please. And then the third one is the social aspects. So here we are looking at the considerations in terms of social equity and social justice for a growing industry like the algae industry. So in a growing sector, it's important to keep certain aspects in mind, like if you want to facilitate this just transition to a green renewable economy as part of the Green New Deal, then there are things that to be considered, and we have a list of these in the report. There's a list of indicators for aquaculture in general, which is taken from a study done, I think, last year, to make algae careers one that avoid gender stereotypes that you perhaps see in other sectors like fishing or farming, to really focus on creating jobs in rural coastal communities where jobs are really needed, also not just seasonal jobs, but year-round employment. And then it also discusses how to distribute value created by the algae industry in a fair manner. And finally, that participation and inclusivity in the sector are key. So making the sector as open as possible, for example, through apprenticeships or practical placements. Next slide, please. Yes, there's another one. So there's a business case for bioremediation. So this follows on from the bioremediation report presented by Eftalia a few minutes ago. And this is looking at what can be done now by young businesses to basically monetize bioremediation services that their company might provide. Of course, there is not really a consensus yet in terms of things like carbon sequestration in marine environments in the scientific community. So we looked at what can be done in the meantime until that consensus is achieved for companies to look at ways to monetize bioremediation services. So the key takeaways were that this term for regeneration, of course, is something we all want, but it requires indicators, and it requires some kind of parameters to measure it, and monetization mechanisms. And this goes beyond carbon. So it's not just about carbon credits, it's also about biodiversity credits, it's about nutrient uptake credits, and things like this. So VCMs in the second key takeaway are voluntary carbon markets. This is when companies offer carbon credits on a voluntary basis. So these are not regulated markets, and they can be potentially misleading or even damaging if those are not properly substantiated. So this is why we need monitoring frameworks for this. But in the report, we also found that high permanence carbon products, so this thing is things like bioplastics or construction materials, so things that last a long time, 100 years or more, and that can be quantified, these are what should be prioritized in the short term. And an example of this is in soil remediation. So an example in the report is biochar, so how marine resources can be used to improve soil quality on land. So these so-called land-sea interactions, and even things like ocean alkalinity enhancement, which is increasing the ability of the oceans to take up atmospheric CO2. So these are early stage things, but they show promise, at least in the short term. So more research is needed in these areas. Next slide, please. Just a couple more things to show. So this is there are two databases that also came out of the first iteration. There is a project database, which is linked to the SINEA project portfolio that we will be shown later today. It's a broader canvas of projects in this database. So we looked at as many funding programs as possible in the EU and collected anything that was relatively relevant to algae. So this is the screenshot on the left. But there's also the support database for young people and entrepreneurs, which I mentioned in the report, which is linked from the Youth and Entrepreneurship report. And there we have things like networks, associations, education and training opportunities, conferences, funding bodies, accelerators, and even some biobanks in there. So these are living databases, so they're not final. We want to add to them over the course of the next iteration. So next slide, and I think that's everything from me. Yeah, but this is just where to find the Airtable. So if you go to the EU4Algae platform, there's a news article about it. You can also find it just by Googling it. So if you look for the EU4Algae support database or EU4Algae project database. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Frederick. I think it shows the great work that you have done together. Also the fact sheets, right? I don't know if you want to mention something about it.
Yes, so this is an example of so we've taken a selection of projects from the database and showcased them in the format of fact sheets. And there will also be more digest reports coming in this iteration of EU4Algae where we feature certain projects along a specific theme. So yeah, these are also on the EU4Algae page of the Maritime Forum. Thanks.
Great. Thanks a lot. I think we have a big audience today, but I see you very quiet. So we are putting all the links in the chat for you to have a closer look of everything that is being presented here. But I don't know if anyone wants to make a comment, a question before we move to the next outcomes. Or you can also use the reactions. Yeah, it's a good question from Marcela, how the project database is being updated. I see also reactions coming up.
So the project database is being managed by colleagues of mine at ESPRO and by the EU4Algae Consortium. Yeah, we're doing mapping at the moment. So to add any missing projects over the past 12 months or so. And we're also working closely with SINEA on their project portfolio, which will be shown later today. So there'll be more on that later.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Frederick. So we'll continue this effort to update the database, as Frederick was saying. And as everything in EU4Algae, we count also on your insights and your inputs. So the database is also something that you can also include and help us to keep this updated. Yeah, but we'll discuss more also when we see the presentation from SINEA, as Frederick said. So now I will hand over to EABA colleagues Ariana Rizzo and Silvio Mangini to present the outcomes.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Laura, for the word. As Laura said, I represent the European Algae Biomass Association with Silvio Mangini. So in EU4Algae, we were involved with Victor Verdello, Jean-Paul Cadoret, and Gabrielle Assien in microalgae production, in algae for food, and algae biorefinery that was led by Gabrielle. So we have 3 outcomes to present. I'll start with the first 2, and then I'll pass the word to Silvio. The first one, it's about bottlenecks that limit the development of the algae sector. So the outcome is divided in a first part where we clarified all the terminology that are related to the algae concept in aquaculture, fisheries, or as crop. So it depends really on the production. Every time microalgae and seaweeds examples are included. So it was quite difficult to summarize everything. And in the second part, we also describe some remaining research and innovation topics that we suggest within EABA stakeholders. So to start from the first part, we listed 10 main bottlenecks in the algae sector. The first one is about the logistics. So one of the examples is the comparison within microalgae and seaweed and the need of fast seaweed processing since it's wet biomass, and also the strategic locations of the algae plants. The second one, it's about contamination. So it's something that is well known with people that work with microalgae, how it's easy to contaminate its own biomass and the need to sometimes to work in photobioreactors that increases the cost. And of course, when we have contamination, it can increase the cost because it decreases the productivity. Then the market demand. So the market of algae fluctuates, is not that big, and in Europe it mainly addresses algae for food, and it lacks of products diversification. As I say, the main one is the application on food, but more products needs to be explored. The awareness is something that has been mentioned before, but Europe has not a big culture in algae consumption compared to Asia. That is something that is also considered in this outcome. So there are more and more activities and workshops that try to include algae in the food. And one of the problems is that sometimes it's proposed not as a final product on the market, but as an ingredient on the B2B market. So that's something that should be improved as well. Then we also consider the labor, the people that are involved in the algae work. They need to be specialized. So a similar field, it's people that work with plants, but as you might know, is not really similar to the algae work. So it's always difficult to find the people that are specialized in biochemistry, biotechnology, algae physiology, etc. The investability. So as Frederick was mentioning, it's something that needs to be incentivized, and capital is limited, and it doesn't help startups or companies to increase their at scale production, and also to bring more innovation in the field. This is also related on outdated equipment. So this increases the productivity because we have a lot of loss on the biomass that we produce, like especially in the downstream process and only the watering. And this increases also the OPEX, the lack of automatization. Linked always to the market, there is a lack of good or sometimes sufficient business models that aim on a single product, like to replace, for instance, vegan food. Sometimes there are companies that aim on only target with a mono product, and this can result in a not winning business model from their side. On the bioprocessing side, on the downstream part, there are many steps. Sometimes there is biomass that I said it's lost, or the extraction process is not efficient. There are many steps also to guarantee the purification and the compliance of the final product. And at the end, one of the bottleneck steps is related to all of them, and that's really highlighted in the outcome. It's the regulatory, so that sometimes is not harmonized, and or it leads to increase the final cost, for instance, to apply for a novel food product. That's something that Silvia will explain in a different outcome. So on the other side, from the description of the remaining research and innovation topics, next slide, please. So here, I really invite you to consult the report because there was a lot to say. There are many concrete examples that might help. So I resume this with that table where there are the research needed, some examples, and then the bottlenecks that can be addressed. For instance, the genetic engineer and strain optimization can help to have a diversification of the algae products on the market, and also just increase the productivity. The cultivation optimization is mainly about the upstream process, so to innovate in the photobioreactor design. And also this is something that is really on fashion right now, to include artificial intelligence monitoring systems. On another topic, algal bioremediation for wastewater treatment and CO2 capture can help on the diversification, and there are still very few projects that address this topic in Europe, and they are still successful. So one of the suggestions is to improve the research and also the industry to work on that. Another topic on the remaining research that has incentivized a lot of European projects on research is the algal biorefinery. So to increase the biomass that can be exploited and the multi-products production from a single biomass, limiting the loss, can really help on the efficiency of the value chain. The downstream processing can be improved with decreasing the OPEX cost, and have a more cost-effective harvesting and extraction methods. On the biofertilizers and soil amendments, it's something that was mainly under the working group 6 by Gabriel Latien, that has published different reports under EU4Algae about that. But it really gives more opportunities to replace the synthetic biofertilizers with cost-effective ones. And here, one of the main bottlenecks is either the market demands, the fact that from the regulatory, there are, for instance, cyanobacteria that are included in the organisms that can't be used in biofertilizers because they are considered as toxic. So it's still some work to do about that. About the economic and policy analysis, this is condensed in just one suggestion, but we talked quite extensively on that in the outcome. So from one side, there is the need to have trustable techno-economic analysis that can really help the startup to develop their business models and also to forecast the CapEx and OPEX cost. And from the policy part, a need of harmonization. We published the contaminant reports about, for instance, heavy metals pollution, and we stress the fact that some contaminants like cadmium or iodine are in different limits in different countries, like in France and Germany, it varies. So this report stresses also the need of harmonization and the fact that sometimes many algae products are produced abroad, outside Europe, but they are claimed as European products. And to conclude on the LCA, EIBA has formed our LCA task force to homogenize the process of the LCA, to evaluate the environmental impact and to be more consistent in the evaluation. So that's all for the first report, and I'll pass to the second one. You'll tell me, Laura, if I take too much time. So the second one, it's about the overview of the European initiatives for a safe and sustainable algae industry. So in this report, first we list all the initiatives that can include algae. There is an annex that is about the sustainable development goals and how algae fit in each of them. About the ones listed here, for example, there is the European Green Deal to foster the sustainable and circular bioeconomy solutions. So it really can be mentioned algae bioremediation in it. Algae productions, either with harvesting or aquaculture, is governed by the Common Fisheries Policy. And within aquaculture, algae are mentioned as one of the alternative protein source for sustainable food and also feed. The European Bioeconomy Strategy promotes economic activities based on biological resources, so terrestrial and marine. The Sustainable Development Goals that I mentioned. On an international level, algae has potential for carbon storage, so it can help to meet the greenhouse gas reduction target that are defined by the Paris Climate Agreement. The Nagoya Protocol highlights the role of algae in preserving genetic diversity and enhances the equitable access to the genetic resources, especially people that work in research are very well aware of this. And on a different aspect, European legislation like the Marine Strategy Framework Directive helps to maintain a good environmental status of the European waters. And so it refers to the algae farmings that must not harm ecosystem and should follow an ecosystem-based approach. Here there are also three new European-funded projects that are about genetic engineers in kelps, about biorefinery, and you can find many more in the EU4Algae table as well. So from a different aspect that concerns less the policy, some of the initiatives concern the scientific research. So either the publications, but also conferences that allows the networking. And here I feel like I should mention the Algae Europe conference that brings together academia and industry and academia. The government reports and policies, it refers to all the outcomes that come from the initiatives that I mentioned before. Another source of knowledge comes from the industry publications and case studies. So the need of having best practices, shared experiences, and the techno-economic analysis for installation costs, and also be aware of scaling challenges. The evaluation of the environmental impact assessment, it helps to evaluate the risk and also the benefits concerning also the environment, like the water quality, how it works for the nutrient recycling to avoid pollution. Then to foster the sustainable algae industry, we need collaborations within researchers, industry stakeholders, and policymakers. And here there are programs like Horizon Europe that funds efforts of interdisciplinary projects. Then next slide, please. On the regulatory frameworks, there are some recommendations in the report. So first, it's helpful to include that in the algae topics because it's helped to anticipate the compliance challenges. And also, of course, it ensures the environmental protection and the consumer safety. The relevant registration that are pertinent to algae include REACH about the chemicals and the novel food regulation. And here there are also some recommendations on large-scale cultivation with a multi-integrate approach, like to combine algae production with wind farms. And there are also some recommendations to harmonize licensing for seaweed farms. On the data analytics and modeling, so these last 2 points, 7 and 8, are more about recommendations that really overview of initiatives. So on the data and analytics and modeling, it recommends to rely on advanced tools to optimize the algae cultivation and to help anticipate and mitigate as consequence the environmental impact. And last, for the stakeholder engagement and public perception, we suggest to create a web-based one-stop shop for EU4Algae stakeholders to share the knowledge, helping the startups. And I think that's it for my side. So thank you very much. I'll pass the word to Silvio for the last outcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Arianna. This report deals with the novel food regulation and specifically with the revised EFSA guidance for an application dossier to the novel food authorization. The first aim of this report is to allow the algae stakeholder as a food business operator to understand if its product is a novel food or not. And in this respect, decision 3 is provided aiming to help understanding the applicability of the regulation to any specific case with 3 possible outcomes, namely the product is not novel and as such can go directly to the market as any other food or food supplement, or the decision if it is a novel food or not is pending, which means that an application is currently open. Sorry, a consultation is currently open in this respect. Or third case, it is a novel food and authorization is necessary in order to go to the market. And the report then works in order that this case, which is the necessity of an application to the Commission to get authorization, is exploited, helping the food business operator to develop the novel food dossier according the regulation in order to finally get this authorization for marketing. The novel food dossier has to be filed according the implementing regulation dealing with the details of such dossier and with reference to the EFSA scientific regulation, which provide all the requirements that must be fulfilled in order to get the authorization. In this respect, the report deals with what is algae specific in the scientific guidance, because we are convinced that it is not easy nor convenient for a food business operator to manage a novel food application only with the internal resources of a company. It is necessary to go outside to specialty consultants, to advisor, and also to be in position to get an estimation in advance of the timing and the cost of the project. And inside this evaluation, also algae-specific issues of the EFSA guidance are considered, such as the difference of requirements between seaweed and microalgae, because microalgae are regarded as microorganisms for EFSA to make safety evaluation, and as microorganisms, they must be identified, and also the final viability of the organism in the product has to be checked. So the reports open also the roadmap in order that specific issues of the scientific guidance can be dealt with by stakeholders with the aid of forthcoming European standards. Next slide, please. And this is a synthetic overview of the possible cases that a food business operator can find looking at a specific product. in the Novel Food Catalog. The Novel Food Catalog, in conjunction with this explanatory report, is the first tool provided by the Commission to deal with the novel food regulation. Here, the possible cases are described with the different labels that anyone can find in the Novel Food Catalog. So the product could be not novel, and as such, it is a conventional food or food supplement. It could be authorized in the Union list, which is the case number 3, and as such, it can be put in the market in compliance with the specification and the use conditions of the Union list. So there is a difference from a food that is included in the Novel Food Catalog as not novel, or if it is authorized novel food, because the requirements are far more stringent. If the product is listed as novel, it requires authorization, and if it is under consultation, this means that some member state or stakeholder has already opened the consultation process, which outcome will be the answer if it is novel food or food supplement or not, and will be published in the next update of the Novel Food Catalog. So that's it from my side.
Thank you very much, Silvio. And here, as you mentioned, you have the two platforms for the novel and the traditional food. Maybe I'll also ask the colleagues to put in the chat from the EABA page, so everyone can also contribute to that. I don't know if you have something else to add, Silvio. This is it?
Yes, these are examples of the activities that EABA is forwarding to help stakeholders to deal with novel food, and in particular, the traditional food roadmap is very useful for inclusion in the Novel Food Catalog of algae which have an history of consumption outside the European Union countries.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Silvio and Ariana. Before we move forward to Adrian, I see there was an interesting question on the chat from Marcela. Again, thank you very much, Marcela. I don't know, I'll read the question and maybe Maris, you can jump in. So everything still needs to be optimized for the algae systems. Basically, all areas were highlighted as bottlenecks. How is the Commission planning to support the needs developments, more research projects, or more subsidies, investments programs to help companies to optimize their processes? I don't know, Maris, if you want to take over, but yes, indeed, the EU4Algae mandate is really to identify together with you in consultation with all our stakeholders, the main bottlenecks, and we have a very close link with the Commission. So yes, our idea is really to provide insights and inputs. I think also Maris mentioned at the beginning, the willingness from the Commission to support further with more funding for projects. Are you connected, Maris, or want to take this question? Anything to add?
Yes, sure. Yes. Yeah, thanks, Laura, and thanks, Marcela, for the question, and many thanks to colleagues who presented the great outcomes of EU4Algae so far. Yeah, look, I would need maybe 1 hour to reply to this question. It's really very, yeah, it has really a lot of stuff, but in very, very big lines. So the point is that when preparing the EU Algae Initiative, we really analyze the existing bottlenecks that the EU algae sector is facing. And most of them that Ariana presented, they are known. They are not new. And one aspect is that Laura just mentioned, it's exactly why we do have European algae stakeholder platform EU4Algae to look at the specifics on how we can close and which bottlenecks we can close together with the EU4Algae, which is basically our Commission's interface towards the EU algae sector. And so the EU algae initiative, indeed. So we analyzed bottlenecks, we identified objectives, and we identified the specific actions that will contribute to closing these bottlenecks. Of course, things are developing, and of course they are developing very fast. And that's what Ariana mentioned. Some of the bottlenecks are very well known, and some are identified that are complementary or maybe new. So the logic here is that we are bound to prepare a report about the implementation of the EU algae initiative by end of 2027. And this is exactly where we can go further with addressing the further bottlenecks across all these four action areas. As I mentioned already, of course, we look at the research. But research, imagine, let's take Horizon Europe. It's the European Research Framework Program worth of 100 billion euro for a current funding period. While algae is a very small part here, you might have recognized that there is quite a lot and impressive amount of algae-related projects already in the pipeline. So I would say we are doing quite well already ourselves, and also, of course, with DGRTD and relevant DGs attracting funding to the algae. But it's not only that. There is MFAF, European Marine Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund. There is Circular Bio-Based Europe, joint undertaking. They all have the algae-related projects, including to the risk the investments that Marcela pointed out. If we speak specifically about investments, I also mentioned the Blue Invest. We have had the e-pitching sessions dedicated to algae companies. We have a European Investment Bank that is now looking into the sector, which I said is a very promising sign. We are working closely together with the national authorities to look how they could simplify the licensing procedures, allocation of space for the cultivation. We also need to take into account the circumstances and governance, how this is set in the EU, while the aquaculture is a competence of the member states. So EU or Commission is not regulating how the aquaculture is done in the member states. So we need to take all these circumstances into account. And that's why as I emphasized, we need to work together, and we need to really focus on the areas that provides the greatest impact and greatest added value to the sector. So we need to have a focus. Okay, thank you. That's short lead.
That's great. Thank you so much, Maris. And indeed, I think we are going to see still today, Adrian is going to touch on the licensing aspect, but we also have the presentation, as Maris mentioned, from the MFAF, the SINEA portfolio analysis, where we can see a bit more about the Commission efforts in the algae sector. So now I will hand over to Adrian. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning, everyone. Adrian Vincent, and I've been coordinating the working group on macroalgae cultivation, seaweed, in EU4Algae first contract. And to tell you a bit more about this licensing toolkit that Maris just mentioned, I always like to start with this interesting graphic from a report published a couple of years ago that maps the diversity of licensing procedures across EU member states. And I think that perfectly exemplifies what Maris was saying. Today, aquaculture is managed country by country in the EU. And so there is absolutely not any harmonized way to allocate concession to seaweed farms. In some countries, this seaweed is included in a broader marine spatial planning. In some others, no. In some countries, the seaweed permit depends on a broader aquaculture permit. In some others, it's associated with fishing permits, and we still have some countries who are starting to develop a dedicated seaweed process to access a concession. So the starting point is it's very specific to every member state. It's hard to navigate, and it has recurringly been identified as a key bottleneck in increasing the production of seaweed from cultivation to first access to some ocean area that is compatible with other users of the ocean and that is properly regulated so people can start a farm. If you go to next slide. And that's why 4 years ago, the Seaweed for Europe coalition that since then has been integrated with the EU4Algae started this licensing toolkit work that aimed as really helping future farmers navigate those regulatory maze and understand what is expected from them in terms of documentation, what are the best practices to maximize your chances of success, what are the do's and don'ts, and so on. So a first version of the toolkit was prepared some years ago with the contribution of many seaweed players and experts from the field. And if we move to the next slide. And with the integration of Seaweed for Europe within EU4Algae, this licensing toolkit started a new life that started with the transfer of all the resources on our EU4Algae Maritime Forum kind of web page, and it has been expanded, it has been enriched, and it has been made available to everyone on this Maritime Forum. So what can you expect to find in the current licensing toolkit? You have a bit of the raison d'être and the purpose of the toolkit. Then you can find a number of general considerations. And interestingly, even though the procedure might differ from one member state to another, there are still a number of best practices or key questions that you need to ask yourself as a future farmer that are valid across member states. So we really wanted to capture a bit those general guidelines and key questions at the first level. And then really the richness of the toolkit lies in the third part, which is this country-specific licensing process description. So for each of the 7 countries that have been covered so far, you have a similar structure that explains during the preparation phase, during the public consultation and license wrap phase, and then during the installation phase, what are all the sub-activities that are expected from you? What is the key documentation you need to access? And when I say key documentation, it's a mix of the template and paperwork and that you need to fill in and apply with, but also some interesting national guidelines or reports or national toolkits that can help you optimize your chances of success and really navigate this process. So you have all this information at the level of each of those phases, and then you can also expect to find some key contacts. So we have some companies and organizations who volunteered to be featured as key contacts that could play a role of either as a mentor, so as a peer farmer who is happy to share his experience with fellow new farmers. And we also have some consultancies specialized in assisting future seaweed farmers in their application that are referenced on this toolkit. So this is what you can find today. And Laura, if you move to the next slide, I will leave 5 seconds this QR code on screen if you want to access it already now. So hopefully people who are not familiar yet with the toolkit can access it now. And if we move to the next slide, if you move forward, I'm already teasing a bit what is going to be presented in a couple of minutes in the next section that talks about this continuation of EU4Algae post 2025. But I just wanted to give a bit of continuity here and highlight the fact that there is this new toolkit development that has been identified as a key task and priority in this continuation of EU4Algae. And if you move on, Laura, what can you expect to see for this new EU4Algae or enhanced or improved EU4Algae licensing toolkit? We have a clear demand from the Commission to add 8 new countries in this database, so to go up to 15 countries. And we'll take this opportunity to establish a group of focal points with representative in member states. So we have a clear go-to person who is supposed to be the reference, who knows how the regulation works in its country, to help us continue to update, enrich, and clarify the steps in all the countries we are mapping. And of course, we'll continue to promote this licensing toolkit, and especially, and I'm going to wrap up with this, keep in mind that really the target audience are people who are in the process of considering to install a new farm, and this toolkit is supposed to help them think about the good questions and anticipate the whole administrative procedure and take them by the hand to maximize their chances of success. If you're already an established player and you want to expand your farm and you need a new permit, that could also be helpful. But in any case, we really hope this resource, on top of helping farmers, will also help stimulate constructive discussions across member states by showing to each another the best practices, the differences, so they could be under the inspiration and guidance and leadership from the European Commission. There could be progressively a bit more of harmonization from across all these EU member states. With that, that's it for me. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the webinar.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Thank you for all the partners of EU4Algae for presenting the outcomes. Maybe you missed a little bit of context at the beginning, but we wanted really to guide you through all the wrap up of the work that we have done before we move to what is coming next. But just to close this session of about the outcomes, you can find them all in the EU4Algae booklet. We are also going to share the link in the chat so you can have a look. We have also made the link to the several reports that you have seen presented here today. Again, any questions, comments, reactions, just feel free to interact with us while we move forward to present to you what we have in the pipeline, what's coming next, and how we can continue engaging with all of you. So the EU4Algae road ahead. I'm Laura Maranha, the project manager of EU4Algae. And again, here are the partners that you also have seen today here presenting the outcomes. There is coordinating. We have Adrian from Albatross Advisory. We have the European Algae Biomass Association with Silvio Mangini and Ariana Rizzo here represented, and also the ESPRO Sustainable Projects that you also have heard from Frederic Cruz and Eftalia Armanici. So yeah, maybe if some of you have already been with us since the 2022, 2023, I mean the previous year, you recall, and my colleagues also mentioned that we used to work through 7 working groups: macroalgae, microalgae, algae for food, for feed, bioremediation services, materials, and youth entrepreneurship. And it was great work that we managed to do together with you, in collaboration with you. But what we have seen is that we have a huge database. We are now more than 1,000, but at the time around 900. And most of the stakeholders, they were subscribed to more than one working group. So the communication was not always very straightforward. You used to receive a lot of communication from the different working groups. There were also a lot of working group meetings, sometimes not easy for us to manage and for you to attend and be actively engaged in all of them. So we now, in this new phase, we decided to unify the community. So all the communications is going to be unified. You're going to receive the communications about everything that we do inside EU4Algae. And we have organized the work among the 4 action areas of the EU-Algae initiative. So governance, business, research, and awareness. And how we are going to engage with you now? Through the thematic webinars. This one, it's actually transversal. We are not touching upon specific areas. We are covering them all because we wanted really to show to you the work that is now being concluded and what we have in the pipeline and how you can engage. So also to provide an overview, because we mentioned when we were presenting the reports that some of this work is going to be continued now. So just to provide an overview, we have a full work package dedicated to continuing awareness raising activities, which was actually some of the findings of many of the reports, including the one for youth entrepreneurs. We are going to work closely with the schools, teachers. And we want to enhance the platform and promote these events and webinars and seminars, always inviting EU4Algae funded projects. We also have a dedicated scientific work package where you continue to examine the algae legislation at EU level, as also Silvio presented how to bring more species to the EU market as novel traditional food. EAB is also leading a work on industry data together with JRC and ModNet, and should be actually the subject of an upcoming thematic webinar. ESPRO is working on the industry roadmap. Also, we aim to cover that in an upcoming thematic webinar. Also was mentioned the carbon scheme, and we'll continue with the project's database. And Adrian just presented to you about the licensing toolkit. We also aim to deploy, as per leading this effort, a very resourceful farmers toolkit on our website that will be, of course, linked to the licensing toolkit. And also, as Maris already mentioned, we have the second Algae Awareness Summit in October. Yeah, so as mentioned, the cluster meetings, we are always engaging projects in our events. We are also, besides this thematic webinar where we have the 4 projects, we are going to have a workshop at the European Maritime Day this year in Cork, where we also engage with other projects. The thematic webinars, and Adrian also mentioned, and don't worry, we are very soon going to communicate to you exactly when is the date and the subject of the next thematic webinar. This is being adjusted. And we also having training informative sessions in line with Adrian explained with the member states authorities. And our annual meetings, as usual, if you recall, we do it back-to-back to the Algae conference in December. So just to show what we have planned for awareness, we have we are planning an open day in the summit. We want to do paintings, we want to engage schools and kids, cooking classes, and we really count on you if you know about any initiative that is working towards raising awareness on algae. Just join forces with EU4Algae because I think this is beneficial to all of us. And again, we have this occasion of the Algae Awareness Summit planned for 16 and 17 October in Berlin, and our annual meeting in December in Riga. But yeah, we are going to very soon also start disseminating more information about this event as well. We are also promoting some changes on our website under the Maritime Forum. It's just very important to let you know that all the working groups content, meetings, documents are still there. You can see here, let me see, you can see here the list of content that you can find on the website, this content. We are going to continue with the initiatives that we had before, the Algae Business Corner, where we disseminate upcoming funding opportunities to the algae sector. Feel free also to reach us out if you have a job opportunity or something that you think can be interesting for the community. The same for the Knowledge Library. If you have any studies, reports that you'd like to share, this is the place that you can also disseminate. Insider's Perspective, I really invite you to have a look because this was a real success. We have made several interviews and articles with algae projects or companies, so this is something that is worth having a look. And I think this is it. We also now are going to change a little bit to include the other stakeholders that we aim to to reach like the schools and the kids. So there will be some changes on the website, but as mentioned, this is going to continue, the licensing toolkit as well as Adrian presented. And just to conclude, how to engage. We are sending out communications through this email address, it's the Maritime Forum No Reply. So if you see that it's not spam, it's us, we send a message just like this, as also including our newsletters. We also have upcoming newsletters. Again, this is our social media channels. We use Cinea and Digimari's channels. And good news to become a little bit more interactive with you, it's that we are going to have EU4Algae LinkedIn group very soon. And here's our contact. Please, as said, reach us out if you have anything that you think it's worth sharing with the community. This is a bottom-up forum and a collective effort, as Maris was also saying, to move forward the sector. This is it from my side. I don't know, I see here some interactions in the chat. Silvio, you want to say something, Silvio, about your question?
Well, thank you. It is just to understand if also some regulatory or licensing constraints that I understand still happen in different European countries will be addressed together with the seaweed collection in the seas.
Thank you very much, Silvio. I think Adrian missed.
Yes, Silvio, your microphone seems quite low. Could you please repeat?
Oh, sorry. I was just looking to understand if the toolkit will address current lack of harmonization also for microalgae regulatory in the different European countries about access to land and water.
Okay, so I hope it will clarify for everybody here. If you look at the different tasks related to algae farmers toolkits in the new contract, you have two things. You have a specific licensing toolkit, which by definition is really about cultivation of seaweed at sea. And so this is the continuation and the enrichment of the existing licensing toolkit. And then you have, but this one will be embedded into a broader algae farmers toolkit, where you will have two entry points, an entry point about seaweed and entry point about microalgae, where the objective is to identify, promote, and make it easily accessible all the existing resources, toolkits, guidelines, frameworks, softwares, regulation assistance, and so on that have been already produced through the myriad of EU-funded projects or other NGO-led projects, and really make it a bit of the one-stop shop. So any player who has questions about launching or running a farm, be it micro or macroalgae, can find a lot of useful resources. So to your specific point, EU4Algae is not necessarily going to develop from scratch any new analysis on this very specific topic, but we'll do our best to identify existing resources that could be addressing this question and make sure that it's well referenced and easily accessible.
Thank you, Adrian.
Indeed, thank you very much, Silvio, for the question, and Adrian for the clarification. Was indeed a good point to make. And if there are no further questions, comments, let's move forward. I'm also very much looking forward to hear from Giulia Garboni, Program Coordinator Manager for Sustainable Blue Economy at Cinea, on the algae portfolio analysis and the upcoming discussions with the projects. So, Giulia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Laura. I hope you can all hear me well, and thanks a lot for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I know that some of you have already heard part of this presentation because we have been working in CINEA on the analysis of the project funded by the EU on algae. Already in September, we started the work. We started getting data, and my colleague Julien Perry has presented it to a big part of your audience back in December. But here I am with some more recent results. Yeah, I'm a program coordination manager in CNA, and this is already, you can just switch already to the next slide. Indeed, certainly that's not the auditorium where I need to explain what is the potential of algae and why algae are important for us to work on in the European Union. But here in this slide, you see what brought us to this type of work. Already the fact that there is just Europe represents just a very, very low percentage in global production, and so there is a potential to be exploited. And you know that the EU has moved into this direction already with the communication in 2022. There are many EU programs that have allocated funds for the algae sector. We have a policy feedback with DG Mare. What we mean by policy feedback is that we bring back what we learned from the project as funding entity in CINEA back to the colleagues in DG Mare who are developing the policies and following them. That's why this analysis that I'm going to present you was included in a CINEA corporate action plan for cross-program feedback to policy and synergies. And this is why I am to present you what we found out. So next slide to show you where the funds for algae were coming from when we look at the EU funding programs and particular direct funding. There are three big names of program. Of course, I start from the bottom with the Horizon. It already started in the Horizon 2020, so the last programming period, and continued on the Horizon Europe with a different type of grants and the financing system that you can see there. Then our role is played by the LIFE program. It has different sub-programs, and 3 out of 4 are addressing also algae. And last but not least, the funds I work for, so is the European Maritime Fish and Aquaculture Fund, formerly EMFF, where we had different calls, and where the most recent one was the regenerative ocean farming, where the topic is addressed specifically. So if we go to the next slide, we'll I'm going to very briefly tell you what were the objectives of this research. So we wanted to have an overview of the project funded since 2014 and collect recommendation from those projects. So this is where we went a step beyond our usual work, and we went back to the project to ask them what they would like to be reflected on for the next period in terms of both funds and policy developments. Next. How did we do this? We really went back to the different colleagues, asking them which were the projects that they would consider also more relevant for algae, because the subject has been tackled not only under specific cause that one can find back, but also more generally, there have been projects that touched upon it very seriously, although you might not have thought so from the name of the calls or even the name of the project. And what we did is that through a survey, we went back to this over 100 project coordinators and asked for their opinion. Next slide. So what we found out, what is our portfolio, how it is composed? We identified over 200 projects, 219, sometimes 220, depending on how you look at them. But this means that there have been nearly 560 million euros of EU contribution that went to the sector since 2014, and we closed in 2023, let's say, because of course, projects are going on also as we speak. And you can see that the biggest portion goes via the Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, and then LIFE and MFF. Next. We had a lot of fun trying to look where these beneficiaries were coming from, and you'll see that it's specifically in Europe, in the European Union, but also goes up to the whole world, because under Horizon in particular, there are non-EU member states have also access to fund. We try to look at the location from different perspectives, looking at where the beneficiaries were coming from, but also next slide, Laura, please. You'll we looked at which type of beneficiary, where was the money going. And although most of these programs are very often addressed, especially by university and research centers, which are typically public entities, we saw a growth in the private sector, so in the private companies. And you'll so it's a 36% already on the private companies. And if you consider that those public-private partnership have also a private component, 6%, it's kind of nearly balanced, the public-private direction of the funds. Next slide, please. And another element that was very important for us was to see in terms of subject, if it was more towards micro or macro algae, because typically it had been more towards microalgae, including cyanobacteria. But we see that actually with the year, with the time, there is more going also to macro, especially because also there you have projects that are addressing both. And then if you count them in, it is also here nearly balanced. Next one. So we classified the project depending on the sector of commercial application, and where we could see that food and feed sector, it's so food, and then you add up food additives and feed. So there is a lot going to the food and feed sector. There is the 30% other that it looks really as an high percentage, and there it's very diverse. Instead, you have ecosystem restoration, especially under the LIFE program, climate study, carbon sequestration potential, and also algal disease. Nevertheless, we can also see that you also have biofuels, energy, cosmetic, pharmaceutical, bioremediation, and other applications in agriculture, which are also very well addressed by the analyzed projects. And next, we'll see, so a summing up of the main activities. This, I have to say that from the research point of view, it was difficult to find out, because each project has also its own definition of their own activities. But certainly, they are working on development of processing technologies, upscaling the cultivation methodology, and last but not least, very important also for EU4Algae, clearly knowledge transfer and communication. So the next. What have been the main achievements of this project? They work together. They have identified and refined strategies that have improved either the efficiency or developmental sustainability and the economic viability of algae production. In terms of clear results, we have most effective approaches to sustainable algae production and valorization, which we divided into 4 categories. So species, in terms of identification and selection, digitalization and automation, biorefinery approach, where valorizing the production process by products and increasing the value from raw materials, and innovative production methods. So, for example, production of algae biomass coupled with wastewater treatment and carbon sequestration, of course. Next, if we look at the next slide, that's quite interesting. We are talking about technology readiness level. So where the projects were at the beginning and where they are to the end. In the blue one, you see the start level of TRL. If you are not so used to this, so a low TRL, 0, 1, it's really indicate basic research on the topic. And when you go through higher number up to 9, it's full commercial application of a product. You'll see that most of the project starts with a rather low TRL. You will see under 1 basic research, and if you sum up together technology formulation and validation of technology formulation. But what is very interesting to see is that the final TRL through the end of the project, in most of the cases, is 7 to 9. So 30% of the project are at the end bringing the products to a higher readiness level for their technology. One little disclaimer is that, of course, as you have seen, many projects are coming from Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, which was historically a research focus type of program. And this also explains why there have been so many projects also with a very early TRL start. Next slide, please. The barriers. So of course we looked at the positivity and what was achieved by the project, but we also wanted to know what were the barriers the project have identified, and because this is very important for the future of policy making, which will be the barriers that will need to be addressed. So we asked the project to identify them and to see what they were tackling. The two ones that are they are bigger, technical barriers and regulatory barriers are bigger because most of the project identified them as issues. So there is a limited volume of biomass product. The products, as we know, are perishable. And the regulatory barriers, they have been flagged: inconsistent and unclear regulation and the lack of harmonization. They are then followed by market barriers for the high production costs. There is still an issue with consumer acceptance, financial barriers, and social barriers goes a little bit with the consumer acceptance, with lack of consumers' knowledge and shortage of relevant technological and processing skills. And if we go to the next, we see what are the knowledge gaps. So also there where the EU through funding or private investor could help. Still on fundamental research, processing technologies, genetic engineering and strain development, and new species identification and the genetic knowledge, scaling up production. This has been said several times in order to meet the industrial demands and decrease production cost, and the nutritional aspects of algae, especially in, of course, in food and feed application. Regarding knowledge gaps, I would also want to stress that the lack of standard protocols on restoration was highlighted. And another gap identified in two projects was the lack in selecting the right bio-based materials and technologies for the production of new food and feed products. Okay, the next. What were the recommendations that we received from this project when we really asked them, okay, what should be the target of future EU policy or funding support? And here, of course, you have a match with the barriers and the knowledge gaps. So very strong, the need of scaling up production and processing, application range, regulatory procedures, marketing and product development, fundamental research. It was suggesting that it would be appreciated to see the inclusion of algae cultivation in carbon credits and offset programs, create and support a sustainable ecosystem of industries and market key players, raise awareness, social acceptance, and as important, and that's really one of the goal of EU4Algae, is stimulate partnership and collaboration for sector development. So those are the recommendations that we received, and we will pass on, and we are passing on with our paper that is going to be finished soon. And yeah, once again, looking at the conclusion that we reached. So the barriers that have been addressed, but there is still a need to further address technical, market, financial, and social barriers at EU level. There is a need for a reinforced dialogue between EU and national authorities to overcome the regulatory barriers. EU4Algae there can really play a central role. We see that, and that's why we are so happy of this cooperation. Technology advancements to further invest or earmark funding at URLs from 6 to 8. That's where more funding could go through. To engage further investment and stakeholders through, for example, the Blue Invest Assistance Mechanism, but there are also the Sea Basin Strategies Assistance Mechanism and the EU4Algae platform. On this, we are in touch. In terms of geographical scope and location of beneficiaries and actions, I didn't spend a lot of time on that, but we really see that most of the actions are placed in the Atlantic and the North Sea, followed by the Mediterranean, Baltic Sea. The Black Sea is still behind, and that's where we would also like to try to engage further investors and stakeholders through the Blue Invest platforms, the Sea Basin Strategies Assistance Mechanism, and EU4Algae. Last but not least, we could and we will improve access to info on algae through the EMONNet and the Blue Economy Observatory. And then the next slide. So for the sources of funding, so far, the EU programs in direct management have been the principal funding source. When I talk direct management and shared management, it's because, I mean, some of you would know that, for example, MFAF has a big amount on shared management, which is managed through the member states themselves, and the algae projects have a very small budget in comparison. So exploring what is done at that level, at that Interreg, would provide broader insights. We didn't do it. In terms of policy feedback from the survey, we know that EU funding has helped to advance technology and identify best practice, but there could be a future focus on advanced bio-based research and development, address the financial barriers that are still existing in order also to improve market acceptance. As we said, carbon credit initiative for algae cultivation, raising awareness. National and regional authorities very often have limited knowledge or even vision about the algae sector. Many projects have signaled that. So we see that perhaps other entities with whom we work, like FameNet, could play a role. And also, we really see algae as a way to diversify the coastal community economies, and there is a high potential there. And this is all for me now. I don't want to spend more time. I think the projects have much more to say than myself. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia. This was great. Provide a very comprehensive overview of the efforts from the EU in the funding projects. But as you said, I think we can see some concrete results. I see reactions here about your presentation. I don't know if there are any questions or comments. Yeah, otherwise maybe, yeah, we can see actually this in practice with the 4 algae projects that kindly accepted the invitation to be here with us. And for that section, I will invite my colleague Frederick Bruce to moderate. And thank you once again for the project representatives. Frederick.
Thank you, Laura. And thank you, Julia, for the presentation. Very interesting insights in the SINEA database. Yeah, so in this session, I hope the 4 projects, the colleagues are here in the room. I will hand over to them shortly, but just to give you a quick overview. So following along these 4 themes we have connected to the EU Algae Initiative, so shown here as governance, research, awareness, and business. So these are the 4 pillars really that the EU Algae Initiative is built upon, and each of them have corresponding actions under those categories. But we acknowledge in this iteration that they are very much overlapping and cross-pollinatory in nature. So yeah, here there are obviously many projects looking at algae, and SINEA have done a great job mapping those. Here we just want to showcase 4 of those, just to give some insights into the kind of achievements being made by these projects, and then just to really give them some visibility, and yeah, perhaps it's inspiration for how follow-up projects could be developed. So the ones in question are Algae Probanos, and that will be represented by Tarek Youssef from the University of Southern Denmark. Then we have CMARC, represented by Maya Miltel from the Submariner Network for Blue Growth. Then we have Cool Blue Baltic, which is represented by Anna Möllmann from Hauhust, and the Nova Foodies project, finally, from Augusto Marquez at idinea.ai. So what we'll do is we'll just have a few minutes from each of the projects, just to briefly present the project, the outcomes, and then we will have a short panel discussion after that, where I'll ask them some questions. So Tarek, if you're there, please feel free, and we can move to the next slide. So Tarek, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to present our work on digital tools in the context of the Algae Probanos project. I mean, the main aim of the project is accelerating algae product development in the Baltic and North Sea area for more sustainable future. I mean, the key outcomes so far is we have done sustainability framework, wild harvesting strategy, algae accelerator program, and 8 initial products. And we have, like, we are in the progress of developing 4 digital tools, and I'm very happy to present one of them. So I'm going to present the algae knowledge base. So the main aim of this tool is to collect data about algae and build kind of knowledge database. This data can be in the form of books, scientific publications, journals, project reports, news about algae, and Wikipedia pages. For this purpose, we have developed a scraping tool or data collection tool that runs on like on regular basis, and then after we collect this data in different formats, like the majority are in PDF format. So we chunk this data into small chunks, and then we convert them or transform them from a textual format into vector format using some kind of large language models. And then we index and store them in what we call vector database to make them like usable for other tasks. I mean, in the picture you can see like an example of the data sources that we use. We get data from Frontiers, from bioRxiv, from algae, and Wikipedia. The current database has like over 10,000 documents, books or scientific applications, and over 3,000 Wikipedia pages related to algae and seaweeds. The next slide, please. So after building and creating this vector database where we index and stored all this text, we have built on the top of it what we call algae chatbot, or like it's very similar to ChatGPT or other chatbots. We call it algae brain, so where the user is able to enter the query. So we implemented what we call multi-query framework, where we generate for example, 5 parallel or like 5 alternative for the same questions, just to avoid any mistakes that are done by the user if the user couldn't like formulate the question in a correct way. So we try to correct this or like reformulate the question. So we generate 5 versions of the same question, and then we run it across the vector database, try to get some data from then. We also use different similarity metrics to get the data. After that, we get some information from our database. We build a context and send it to the large language model and provide a response. As I mentioned, this is like one of the tools that we develop under Algae Propanus, and if I can like run a quick demo just to show you how this works. Can I share my screen?
Yep, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you very much. So this is what we call like the algae brain. So the website is still under development. So we still have 1 year or like 9 months in our work package to complete this work. So you can create an account or like log in. So I will log in very quickly, and then so once you log in, you will be able like to ask some questions. I prepared like some questions here. So for example, what is like the carbon footprint of aquaculture of Saccharina latissima, sorry for if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. As I said, the tool now is like very slow because I mean it's not in the final version. Here you can get like the answer from the knowledge database with some information, and here you get like the references where these data are coming from. So it lists, for example, here 7 papers or 7 literatures. I mean, you can ask as many questions as you want, and then you will get answer to your questions. And as I said, we are still working on the tool, so the knowledge base is almost complete, but we are still working on the user interface to make it more intuitive and more user friendly. I guess I have presented everything, and I would be happy to answer your questions at the end of the lecture.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Tarek, thank you. It's great to see a live demonstration as well. A quick question while the others are maybe thinking of their own questions. So there's the option to rate the answer provided
Yes.
by the
Yes.
the bot. So what's the use case for that?
Exactly. I mean, as we are still in the development, we are collecting feedback from like the users and domain experts to just evaluate our system and try to enhance the performance by either like adjusting the retrieval system or like the indexing schema in the database.
Okay, so that would be something the EU4Algae community could
Yes.
contribute to.
Exactly.
So almost in training this bot to improve the quality of the answers. So yes, please do.
Exactly.
And this is available already and it's accessible.
Yes, I mean, but you might like encounter some like issues with it's like slow, or sometimes you don't get like the direct answers. It's like now hosted on temporary server, but I mean by the end of this year, I mean this should be like the work package should be completed and it should be accessible to everyone in a very good condition.
Great. Thank you, Tarek. So yeah, very much in a beta version, but I think that's a very valuable resource for the community. And please do get involved in training the AI to improve the answers. Thank you, Tarek. So yes, we might come back to you in the panel discussion. So please do stay. Otherwise, we can move on to the next presentation. If you move to the next slide. So now we will move to CMARC. So now we have Maya here, who can briefly introduce the project. So Maya, if you're ready, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge to summarize the results of CMARC in 5 minutes. We have 12 products that we're working with, so we have quite a lot of results. A lot of them are still waiting to come. We have 1 more year of the project, but today I'm gonna just really briefly go over some of the main results we have already now. We're focusing very much on business and kind of the intersection of business and research. And what we have done is that we've analyzed a lot of the costs in relating to seaweed cultivation and also the biorefinery stage afterwards. And what our lead partner, Ocean Rainforest, has done is that they've developed technology to lower the costs for cultivation and pre-processing mainly. One of the biggest costs in relation to seaweed cultivation and pre-processing is obviously the amount of people working with the development, but also with the drying that comes after to process the cultivated seaweed. So what they've done is that they have developed the sea seeder, which is a direct seeding machine that lowers the cost significantly and also speeds up the process of seeding the seaweed, so kind of before the actual cultivation. And this creates much more scalable farming systems and also a lot more flexibility because it's a lot faster compared to kind of conventional seeding methodologies. You can see in the table up to the right-hand side the speed of the sea seeder and also the iterated sea seeder, the high-speed sea seeder. So the speed development that we've achieved in the project, but also the labor equipment cost of seeding, and it's significantly lower with both the sea seeder and also the high-speed seeder compared to conventional seeding methodology. As I said before, also the drying is a major cost related to the pre-processing. So what Ocean Rainforest has done there is that they have developed a fermentation methodology and also upscaled their fermentation capacities, which means that there are significantly lower costs in relation to the pre-processing of the seaweed afterwards. And the upscaling of these facilities also allow for more effective pre-processing of larger volumes. So you can actually scale up the entire cultivation step before the seaweed goes to further processing of other businesses. Another development of the project is the biorefinery scale-up, which is a major obstacle for a lot of the European cultivators, or kind of the European industry in general, that it's very hard to scale up your biorefinery processes because it's very expensive and you rely on a kind of continuous input of biomass to be able to use the scaled-up facilities in a way that makes sense. But Oceanium has now scaled up their facilities and they're able to process 5 tons of biomass coming in per day, which is a really, really big milestone for the project. And yeah, this provides a highly technical and innovative biorefinery process at scale, which we don't really have apart from this. We are also working with kind of the other intersections that Frederick mentioned before. So, for example, we have a regulatory assessment related to the governance section of EU4Algae. Here we've looked at our 12 products and identified major obstacles or kind of bottlenecks for them to scale up or to develop further. And we'll also compare the European legislation to the legislation in other countries to provide some insights in how we could further create incentives for the European seaweed industry to scale up. And we're also now developing a strategic development plan and investor recommendations, which are going to be very relevant for a lot of the industries in the sector. So you can wait for those to next year. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we're very excited about it. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, then feel free.
Thank you very much, Maya. It's definitely not easy to sum up. I know this is a big project, and like the Algae Propanos project is also very big. So we can't really do them justice in a 5-minute slot. But I think we're ahead of time, so we can relax a little bit and take a bit more time. So if there are any questions, you can raise your hand or switch off your microphone if you want to just speak up. Or you can put your question in the chat and we will come back to that. But in the meantime, I could perhaps ask Maya, so is it just Saccharina latissima that you are, so sugar kelp that you are looking at in the CMARC project, or are there other species involved?
We're looking at, so Ocean Rainforest is looking at Saccharina and also Algolasco in France. Algolasco is working not as much with kind of the cultivation developments, but they're looking into other parts of the seaweed development. So mainly like genetic diversity within the farm. Then we also have Alga Plus in
Portugal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Looking at ulva cultivation. So right now we are testing new cultivation methodologies for ulva land-based in kind of raceways. So that's gonna be very exciting results coming up as well. We have a lot of results now in the last year, so maybe do another presentation next year.
Yeah. And I mean, the EU4Algae platform is certainly the place to disseminate those results because the EU4Algae community is probably one of the most interested target groups for those outputs. I think we have a question in the chat. So from Benar, can you tell us a little bit more about what the drying is such a problem and cost intensive?
Yeah, I mean, the major cost related to drying is the energy cost. So the drying requires a lot of energy, and also, as everybody knows, the last couple of years, energy prices have gone up a lot. So regarding pre-processing. So the pre-processing is kind of the stage before you go to the biorefinery. So it's to create a stable product with a longer shelf life. And then drying is one of the most common ways to pre-process seaweed. But seaweed also contains a lot of water, so you need very long drying times, and a lot of energy goes into the drying. And with the fermentation, you don't need the same amount of energy going in because you don't need to actually take the water away. I mean, you still need a little bit of heat, and because you can't ferment in too cold temperatures, but it's not nearly as expensive as the drying. And it also increases the shelf life of the seaweed a lot. So that's kind of the breakdown of the fermentation and drying.
Yeah, in a nutshell. Thanks very much, Mai. Yeah, great. So, yeah, and just to maybe reiterate, so this green flower that you see on these slides is trying to fit these projects into the four categories of our EU Algae Initiative themes, so governance, business, research, and awareness. But obviously, they do intersect and cross over with each other. So this is not completely accurate, I would say. It's just to give an idea of the general focus of the project. And in the case of CMARC, Maya mentioned that they touch on aspects of governance and also awareness. So it does touch all four of them, but it does have a slightly stronger business and research focus in this one. And that's the same for the other projects that we'll see shortly. Okay, then I think we'll move on to the next project, so we have time for the discussion afterwards. So the next one is the Cool Blue Baltic project. So I think here we'll pass over to Anna from Hauhurst. So please, Anna, over to you.
Thanks, Frederick. So yes, I'm representing Cool Blue Baltic, which is a project with all the European countries around the Baltic Sea. And we have a focus on actually trying to get more people to do regenerative ocean cultivation. We have, over the course of the projects, we are delivering 6 exploitable results, but we're not done yet. So we only have a few of them ready as of now. The first one that I would like to draw attention to is the regional co-assessment workshops, which were sort of a chance for most of the countries in the project to gather stakeholders, both like authorities and business associations and other types of people who might be interested in this ocean farming, to actually assess the readiness level of the specific country, because these countries involved in this project, they are very different in terms of how their level of development in this industry. I should say, now you see some mussels on the slide. That is because the Cool Blue Baltic is not only about algae, it's also about, it's like regenerative ocean farming. So it's also mussels and oysters and other crops, but of course also algae. So just to clarify. Anyways, the co-assessment workshops were sort of very country-specific, very local, to sort of actually highlight this ocean farming as an opportunity in the specific countries, and also to be able to be very specific on the barriers and the potential in each country, because they are so different. And these co-assessments workshops will also form the basis of some of the other exploitable results that will be developed during the last part of the project. Outcome number 2 is our online training platform called Cool Blue Future, something that we in Hauhurst are very proud of. It is online, as you see, and it is a sort of a hub for anyone in Europe who wants to become an ocean farmer, be it with seaweed or with other crops. It has a very strong focus on actually inspiring and providing very hands-on guides as to how to get started, really. So there are both some portrait movies so that you can sort of see, okay, people out there are actually already doing this in different ways and with various focuses, but still they are doing it, so kind of get the idea that it's possible. And then there are also lessons where you can see one of them here. It's a crash course in regenerative ocean farming where we sort of explain the basics in order to make it as easy and accessible as possible to actually venture into this ocean farming field. Another very important aspect of this Coolblue Future platform are the country facilitators. So that's actually key outcome number 3, that we actually have mobilized organization within all these Baltic countries, countries around the Baltic Sea, to be sort of the help desk. So if you are in Poland and you want to do regenerative ocean farming, you can actually, in Coolblue Future, you can find out who you're going to call, because it is very differing in terms of permits and ways to do it and how to sell it and everything. So we sort of, one of our intention with the site is to make it very usable, and that in that sense it has to be national. Even though we love European sort of strategies and leverages, we also just have to recognize that today it is very differing in the different countries. So that's why we chose to make a very country-specific content on this platform. It's also actually in 8 languages, which is, I can tell you, crazy. But again, to make it accessible, because if you are maybe a potential seaweed farmer in Poland, the mere fact that things are in English in the website you enter will be kind of a difficult bridge to cross. The same goes for our Danish cultivators. They're not interested in reading something in English. So that's why we chose to make this language focus a part of this platform. What you can also do in this site that I would like to mention is, so you can also sort of make an expression of interest. So it's also a way of actually, what we hope to do is to collect people who are actually interested in, or potentially interested in, actually establishing their own cultivation of either seaweed or mussels or oysters, to hopefully get sort of a pool of people that are just above average interested in actually proceeding with the cultivation in the long term. Yeah. And as Frederick said, Coolblue is also placed in the middle of the 4 circles. I think that's sort of we're not very research intensive. There is something on monitoring, but compared to some of the other examples here, I think we are more into the which is difficult, in the governance and the awareness and a little bit of business. Yeah. I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, another very interesting project. And yeah, so I think you see the difference already between this one and the previous 2 projects, Algae Probanos and CMARC, that they have very much different focuses. This one seems to be very much down at the local level. So for people in specific places who want to start something perhaps smaller scale. But that was also mentioned earlier today, I think in the presentation from Cinea, the role of algae in coastal communities and in coastal economies. And that's one of the things that's quite interesting in this project, perhaps the business aspect, like how do you make these small scale operations commercially viable? And is that something you're looking at in this project, Anna, the viability?
Yes, to some extent. There is it has a sister project called Just Coolblue, and we're very much focused on the business side of things there. But I can say that one of the sort of perspectives that we place on the business aspect is that it should be viable in a smaller scale. So that's, as you say, quite contrary to the other projects that we heard about. But that is in order to make it more sustainable in the local, very local communities and the local waters, basically. So yeah, we are looking at the commercial aspect of it, but in another scale than the other projects, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're all valid because I guess I mean the question of scalability is not always about large scale; it's about multiple scales. So, thank you very much. Then we can move on to our 4th project. And I think, yeah, so here it is on the slide, Nova Foodies, and then we have Augusto here who's going to present to us. So Augusto, over to you.
Hello, thank you, Frederic. It's a pleasure to be here today to present the Nova Foodies project. I belong to IDNR, which is the representative of the Nova Foodies as the coordinator entity. So Nova Foodies is a very, very large project that is involving many different entities from many different areas, even from the fisheries industries, research institutes, also technological companies, as well as even non-governmental organizations and associated companies. So first of all, one of the key outcomes for the project is the sustainable production of micro and macro algae and fish. In this case, we have a first part of the project that is involving up to 7 IMTAs from the whole Europe. You can see here in the picture in the top and left. So we have IMTAs from Ireland, the Mull Bay, so they traditionally cultivate their Atlantic salmon together with blue mussel, and here the integration within the project is to introduce Alaria esculenta in the co-cultivation of this species. We have also an IMTA in Estonia, in Saaremaa. So this is a land-based IMTA where they are harvesting rainbow trout, and they are also introducing Ulva intestinalis in the co-cultivation. We have 2 IMTAs out from Europe. One of them is in Haifa in Israel, where they are cultivating sea bream together with Ulva and also Sarcocornea. We have a partner from China as well in the Sanggu Bay. They are cultivating since the 90s oysters, and they are also introducing sea cucumbers in this case. From Greece, we have Kefalonia. So in this case, it's also a land-based IMTA with sea bream, and they are introducing in the framework of the Nova Foodies, Ulva and also Chondrochanthus. And 2 more in the south of Europe, one of them in Genova in Italy, and the other one in Portugal, in Sagres. The one in Italy, in Genova, they are cultivating traditionally sea bream, and they are also introducing Ericaria. And in Sagres, they are combining the offshore mussel farm that they are running for several years with Laminaria. So this is the first part of the project, the co-cultivation, the integration of multitrophic species together in a system. And this is accompanied by the development of models to optimize the co-cultivation and to select very well which kind of combination are the best for a productive system. So first of all, we are modeling the growth of individual species. And after obtaining the environmental results, because we are also monitoring very well the environmental condition of every of these sites, together with the growth of the fish and also of the algae, of course, we can guess which one are the best combination for a future implementation of this kind of systems in the whole Europe. Together with this, we have a second part of the project that is using alternative, let's say, sources of like wastes, or for example, harvesting in estuarine areas, also using waste liquids for algae cultivation. We can see here, for example, the harvesting in estuarine areas in the south of Spain, in Cádiz. And in the right, we can see the cultivation in liquid wastes in the port of Limassol in Cyprus. So the idea is also to valorize this algae, for example, for the creation or the fabrication of algae-based packaging solutions. Of course, we can apply or we can use the collected biomass for other purposes, for example, for innovative aquafeeds. That is also in the scope of the project. Besides the use of algae is also for the innovation in terms of novel food prototypes. Here you can see the inclusion of Alaria powder in bread. We are carrying out in parallel studies of consumers to see if this is well accepted or not, or to which extent the inclusion of these novel ingredients are accepted within the European consumers. This second part, we are also studying micro and macroalgae extracts for different kind of properties, like for example, antimicrobial properties, anti-inflammatory properties as well. This is also in the scope of the project. And for a more technological part, we are also combining different processing of the biomass of macro and microalgae. For example, the use of microwave-assisted technologies for a fast and efficient drying of the biomass. So currently, many partners or many companies are using traditional heating ovens, for example, to preserve the biomass. And now here in the project, what we propose is to use a microwave-assisted processes to first of all save energy in the process at the same time that we preserve very well the organoleptic characteristics and properties of the products. We are also very focused on enhancing the consumer trust and also the end user trusts and the stakeholders by, for example, engineering and producing devices for traceability, as you can see in this picture. On the right, this is a device that can follow the generation of gases that are very, very related to the spoilage of the biomass, for example, like sulfides, carbon dioxide, methane, etc. And this is connected to a cloud that is also being developing in the project, an IoT cloud where eventually a final consumer can follow the track of what he is buying, so from the origin until the end, and also to control very well the conditions of this transportation and to see besides the classical, the organoleptic and also the nutritional properties, also all the value chain that is behind this final product. This will be in form of a marketplace online, but also as an application for a better scanning of the products in the final groceries or supermarkets. Together with this, we are also, as the last point, the fifth point here in the list, we're improving also, or we are committed to improve the workforce skills and competencies through the European citizens. So we are developing also training courses for unemployed people and also for specialists in the blue economy as well. So we are keeping in mind both sections. First of all, to integrate more workforce into the sector. This is for the unemployed people, but also to reinforce the people that is already working there. And for this purpose, we're in permanent contact with the stakeholders and interested companies that are guiding us to select very well the content of those training courses. So as you can see, and this is only a very, very brief summary. For sure, I have omitted here a lot of information and a lot of results that we are obtaining in the framework of the Nova Foods project. But yes, with the only 5 minutes time, I have to commit very well to what I think would be more interesting regarding this EU4Algae proposal, and yes. So I'm open to any kind of questions if you want to go in deep details of the results and also of the objectives of the project and so on. So thank you very much again, Frederica and Laura, for having us today here.
Thank you very much, Augusto. And yeah, anyone who would like to raise their hand or ask a question in the chat, please do so. But it's a hugely impressive project. It seems like, again, quite a large project with many moving parts. 7 IMTA pilots is certainly very impressive. Yeah, so maybe in the meantime, if we're waiting for questions to come, the Alaria species you mentioned this already has, it's not a novel food, it's already saleable as a food product, is that correct?
Yes, it is. But we are in our food is what we are also looking for is to integrate that in products that are not yet in the market, or we believe they are not, and to also to study their potential acceptance by the end consumers. Because this is only the bread proposal is only one of them, but we have many more. For example, sausages, smoothies, hamburgers, crackers. I mean, there is a long list of potential products that we are studying regarding their acceptance within the consumers.
Okay.
And also regarding the content, sorry, Frederick, also regarding the content, because for example, from these proposals, the most valorized proposal was the 5%, for example, Falaria powder within the bread.
Interesting.
So,
yeah, I've personally experimented with chlorella in bread, and it came out very green, and I think the percentage was too high. So, so do you think this this balance of allocating Novo Foodies in among business research and awareness is a fair one? Do you not look at governance so much on IMTA, for example?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
So we've put the focus of Novo Foodies under business research and awareness, and it seems like you cover these three aspects very well.
Yes, yes, I think so. Yeah.
Is there also
Yeah,
governance
we
aspects?
are also. I didn't mention that, but we are also partners that are very specialist in exploiting the key results of the projects. So we are keeping this always in mind. So every partner has identified which one of the results can be potentially exploited in the future. So we are developing all the canvas, all the business study, the market studies to see very well and to approach very well which are the objectives from which the European citizens can be beneficial or from them.
Great. And I think there's a comment, not a question in the chat.
Yeah,
so
this is a member of the project.
Okay. Yeah, so there was also some initial maybe confusion with the novel food regulation.
Yes.
But that's been clarified since, I suppose. And yeah. Okay. Any other questions in the chat or elsewhere? Otherwise, I think we can move to the panel discussion. So I've actually prepared this slide myself in advance, but this is not, it's my own best guess at where your projects contribute to the EU Algae Initiative. So as you can see, we have the 4 pillars: governance, business, research, and awareness. And there are 23 actions in total. And from what I've learned recently about these projects, or from looking at your websites and your the available results, it seems like there is a very good coverage of the action points in the EU Algae Initiative, because I think there's only around 5 that are not addressed, which partly refer to biofuels. So yeah, maybe if all of the speakers would be available to answer questions now, maybe you could also ask each other questions. But are you conscious of this EU Algae Initiative in your project? Is this something that you you follow and discuss with your project partners? Does anyone want to come back to answer that question? Maybe I could pick on someone. Maya, perhaps?
Yeah, I would say for sure I think for CMARC we're covering the first 3 majorly. It's a very integrated part in the entire project with the governance, business, and research. Obviously, we also touch upon the awareness, but since the project it's very industry focused, I think there could be more room for more kind of awareness campaigns. But then, of course, obviously, awareness it's kind of what comes after the industry anyway. So It's definitely a big topic, especially for the industry partners to also work with the awareness section. But for the other ones, I mean, yeah, we have so many results that I haven't been able to present today. We just recently got our results on the biodiversity assessments from the Ocean Rainforest Farm. So that's a big part of our research, kind of our research focus, to look at the biodiversity effects and the blue carbon sinks as well. So we've done a carbon capture estimation for the farm. Also trying to see what is actually being captured, what disappears, what happens to the carbon. But there's a lot more research that needs to go into it. It's very difficult to track carbon in the sea, if we just put it like that.
Yeah, that was certainly one of the findings of one of the EU4Algae reports. And so maybe if we go to Anna, so there's a cool blue logo by number 9, so the reorientation of fishes to regenerative ocean farming. Could you say something about that within the cool blue projects you mentioned?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we all know that fishers are having a hard time these days because the ocean sort of lacks fish. And so we are working with a couple of coastal fishermen who actually, through the Cool Blue projects, we managed to gain some other additional funding to actually set up 2 seaweed farms around Zealand in Denmark. And so one is in operation, another one will be soon. And the goal here is to actually assess the viability of this co-production of fishing and cultivating at sea. So again, we are on a different scale, but the idea is to make business models that are more diversified in the income portfolio, meaning that if the fish are not there, they can make some money on other crops and still be able to stay in business, and hopefully also contribute to the local ecosystems that they want to harvest fish from. So it's sort of that's at least the idea. So now we are testing it in practice, and for now the focus is on seaweed, and we're beginning with sugar kelp, but there are also other seaweed types coming along. Don't ask me which ones. I'm not the expert here. But so yeah, that is for sure a thing also, since we are also in Havhøst occupied with the coastal communities and sort of maintaining the population and the economic activity in the coastal regions. So that's of course also why it's an important aspect to keep the fishers in the harbors and make them have a living somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, maybe if we go to so I think there's certainly a link there with if you mentioned sugar kelp is the kind of bread and butter, let's say, of the seaweed farming world at the moment. But I think there's obviously a link to the CMARC and the algae probanus, sorry, and the Nova Foodies project, in that they are looking at other species, for example, ulva or alaria,
Sure.
that could come along later.
We are also in other projects looking at other types, but it's just, at least in Denmark, that's the seaweed that's mostly, the safe bet, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And Tarek, maybe if we come back to you about the contribution of this algae knowledge base, this AI-driven knowledge base that you are developing. I mean, how do you see that contributing to this EU algae initiative? Is it part of the algae farmers toolkit, for example, under governance? What do you think?
I mean, really, the knowledge base can be used like in different ways. That depends on the purpose. So, like our main aim is to collect all this data and provide it, convert it into usable format. So on the top of this data, you can build so many projects or so many tools that can serve different purposes. So what we are doing now, so we're collecting data, building this tool, or like the knowledge base and make it available for other like to serve different purposes. So I mean, it's like a customizable, adjustable. We can make it to serve different goals.
Yeah, and maybe as a hint for any students out there, if you are studying algae, it might be a good resource. But
yeah,
of course.
hopefully. Yes, I mean, we are, as I said, like work is still in progress. We are working to enhance like the quality of the answers and like the make them more concrete, not like providing very broad or like unclear answer. So hopefully by the end of this year, the tool will be like completely done. But I just want to mention that this will be always like ongoing like development. So even after the end of algae Propanos, we are planning like to keep developing this tool and importing data and enhancing the retrieval system.
Yeah, and it's a perfect example of a tool that would be part of the Algae Farmers Toolkit as something that we would encourage the use of and promote through the Algae Farmers Toolkit, because it will essentially be a kit of tools like the Algae Knowledge Base. So that will be a very, very useful one moving forward. And just because we talked quite a lot about macroalgae and sugar kelp, just to clarify, there are microalgae aspects to some of these projects. So Augusto, you mentioned microalgae in some of the food products.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. In our foods project, we are very focused also on the upscaling of microalgae cultivation systems. As you know, this microalgae would be or can be used specifically for the extraction of very, very interesting compounds that can be applied later on, not only in the food sector, but also in the, for example, as nutraceuticals or even in the pharma sector as well. So this is something that we are really, really focused on. It's also very, very challenging to generate or to construct or to develop a pilot for the microalgae. We can tell that we are facing some difficulties in this sense, but now with the good weather, I hope with more sun hours, we will face it and we will finally manage to construct them. Yeah, I mean, we are also covering this area of the micro and the purposes for using them also, for example, in medicinal soups as well, as one of the objectives of the project.
Great.
Yeah.
And microalgae also features in Algae Propanos, if I'm not mistaken. Tarek, is that correct?
Yeah, I can jump in here as well. Hi, I'm Ferdi Bulmer. I'm also working on Algae Probanos. I won't necessarily ask Tarek to stray too far from the algae knowledge base. So yes, we also have two microalgae pilots within Algae Probanos, both working with CO2 flue gas and working on products around food, feed, and cosmetics. Yeah, Algae Probanos, of course, Baltic and North Sea is what BANOS stands for, as many people know. So we are basically cold climate microalgae production within the project, which of course means different conditions to the warmer climates where most of it is produced. So we're very much working on that aspect as well.
Okay, thank you.
Say that Submarine will also have two new products that are starting now this year, Alliance and Multiply, that are very similar to Algae Propanos and CMARC in kind of the content, but only focusing on microalgae instead of macroalgae. So there is a lot happening on the algae scene.
Okay, so there's the microalgae world is alive and well, and it also features. So there's good to see that balance in the future in the projects coming up. All right, so then maybe to wrap up and conclude this session, maybe a final question to you all. So whether you see or how you think you can leverage the EU4Algae community in the implementation of your projects, and whether you feel like you are kind of working together towards something, or whether there could be somehow more cross collaboration between projects. Maybe some of you could give some examples of where you've collaborated with other projects, if you are aware of the stuff that's going on in parallel. That was about 5 questions now, but if someone wants to have a go at answering that.
I can start. I think there is a lot of collaboration going on, but there is of course always room for more. One thing that we are trying to do in CMARC is that we have the algae working group in Blue Biomatch, which is hosted by Submariner. And here we try to create collaborations both with other projects, but also just within the industry in general. And we also have the working group meetings where we are collaborating a lot with other projects to kind of lift and disseminate and exploit the result of all of the projects that are kind of going on at the moment. And also trying to connect businesses with the research, with the users. So I think that is one of the main platforms that we are using within the CMARC project.
Yeah, I think one concrete collaboration area there where Algae Probanos and indeed CMARC have been working with other projects is the LCA work. Of course, for this LC comparable, we need to be using the same criteria, the same set of rules. So it's really important in this case, for example, that the different projects which have life cycle assessment as part of their outputs are really working together and making sure that we are coming up with something more standardized here. So that's something that's been happening across a number of projects over the recent months. And then secondly, I mean, Maya mentioned Blue Biomatch, the platform, and in itself it's actually a collaboration of different projects which have come together to use this platform as a stakeholder engagement and communication platform. So we have all contributed to the setting up of this platform across not only algae, but also other blue projects. But in any case, I think this is another good example of collaboration, which has brought actually something which is much more substantial than individual projects could achieve by themselves.
Yeah, greater than the sum of their parts, indeed. So, yeah, I think that's some good examples there. And of course, EU4Algae is another level as well, where we want to collaborate across Europe and make it possible to collaborate across Europe. Augusto, did you want to add?
Yes. I also wanted to mention that Nova Food is also collaborating with his sister projects, which are Impress and Innaqua. So we commonly invite the other to present the last progresses in our meetings, in our consortium meetings. So it's always very, very interesting to know the progress not only for our project but also the progress from the other projects, because this can also guide you very well on your research lines that you are currently developing. And also I wanted to mention regarding the 21st point here in the awareness. I think this is key also to boost the algae sector in Europe, because I can tell you that because, for example, we have a Chinese partner in the consortium as well, and it's very clear how, depending on the region, in this case China, they are much more advanced in these terms because also of their social acceptance. There's so many years that they are let's say very common consumers of this kind of products, and this is also something that we are also very focused on in the Nova Food's projects to increase this awareness among the European citizens. So just this point, Frederick.
Yeah, thank you, Augusto. Yeah, I think the novel food issue is not such an issue in China because they've been eating it for probably thousands of years and not just since 1997. But yeah, so I think that's a really good insight, at least, into a few projects in the EU4Algae community. And we've had a few platforms and networks and working groups mentioned there, and there are more. And we want to collect as many of those as possible and make them available to the EU4Algae community, largely through this Algae Farmers Toolkit, which includes the licensing toolkit. So yes, we really encourage you to bombard the EU4Algae consortium with information, with outputs, with resources and tools. because we should be ideally the first exploitation channel for your projects, so that we can achieve that critical mass together. So I think collaboration, as usual, is a nice way to end the session. And then I think we can pass back over to Laura now and the Euro team to conclude the session.
Yes, thank you so much, Frederick. Thank you very much for the project. It was really, really insightful. And I think Frederick said everything. Adrian also made the point earlier that we are not creating things from the scratch. We are here actually to give voice and space to the different initiatives, projects, companies, knowledge. So really count on us. This is our forum from all of us, not the consortium one, the algae sector one. I don't know if there are further comments or questions here in the chat, but not maybe. I think it was really insightful, and we have here a very small inquiry for you if you want to help us to see how the session went. And I think especially those at the CAT time are very hungry now. But maybe, I don't know, Maris, would you like to make some, or any other partner would you like to say a few words to close the session? Thank you.
Maybe, yeah, thanks, Laura. Maybe just a few words indeed, that there is a lunchtime already. Yeah, look, I mean, to me personally, this webinar met the expectations. And I really learned a couple of new things. And as I said, it's really important that the EU projects are working together. And we know that Cool Blue Baltic, CFARA, they will finish this year. And it's extremely important that the deliverables and all the good stuff that had been delivered, that they don't disappear just in some databases or systems, that they are picked up and taken over and brought to the next level. And this is exactly how this looks like here. For instance, for this new algae farmers toolkit, you already have elements that could feed into that toolkit from Cool Blue Baltic. And this is exactly why we need to bring those projects together, why we need to build on the successes of each other and bring them to the next level. But anyhow, yeah, many thanks to all the participants, to panelists. For me, it was really, really useful and successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Then we close the session and have a great rest of the day. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.